It's wonderful to be back with you all for our fifth session of Dialogues for Design. When we started this series, our goal was very simple. That's to move beyond just talking about change and actually start designing it. But today, we're diving into what it really takes to build an institution that doesn't just survive the future, but actually thrives in it. We're talking about resilience, digital agility, and the courage to reimagine the university model from the ground up. But before we get started, I know everyone's really excited. Let me just give you a very quick reminders to help things run smoothly during the entire session. So please take a moment to rename yourself on Zoom, our dear Zoom participants, using your HEI initials or university initials followed by your name. Now, if you are having trouble with the settings, then no worries. Just drop the name of your institution or of your university in the chat so we can acknowledge your institution. Please keep your microphones on mute during the session. But don't worry, we'll give you time later to unmute yourselves should you be addressing a question to our respective speaker. We encourage you also to drop your questions in the chat box at any time because later on, we will have a dedicated Q&A session before the end of the segment. Today's session is being recorded, everyone. So no need to take down notes, no need to record this for yourselves because we will be sharing with all of the registered participants the recording of this afternoon session. And to help us navigate today's session, everyone, I am absolutely thrilled to welcome back on the virtual floor a very good friend of ASU UDI, Dr. Gail McDonald. Well, I am not going to spend too much reciting her full bio or elaborating on her background, mostly because I know her far too well and I could go on all day. Excuse me. Well, I am seeing heart react this very early. Plus, I know she'll be weaving in much more about her journey and what she does during her talk today. Maybe what I can just share with everyone is that Gail is our senior fellow at the University Design Institute, and she brings incredible experience as professor emeritus and from her time leading the global development portfolio of RMIT University in Vietnam. Beyond her titles, everyone, she has a unique gift for looking at the architecture of a university, the systems and the culture that truly make it work. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I am sharing the virtual floor to a very good friend, Dr. Gail McDonald. Gail, thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Oh, thank you so much, Beth. And I'm seeing some faces that are very, very familiar. I'm just thrilled that you're here on this particular call. So this is wonderful to see you again. For those that I haven't met, my name is Gail McDonald. I'm currently president of Millennia University, which doesn't exist. So it's great to be president of a university that doesn't exist. Previously, I was with ASU and UDI working on a project in the Philippines. And prior to that, I was president of RMIT University in Vietnam. So I think because I've got a lot to go through, I think we're going to jump straight into the presentation, and we can take some questions at the end. May Beth just yell out when you're about 5 minutes before I should finish, and at that point I'll either stop or giddy up, depending on where we are within the presentation. So everybody, today what we're going to be looking at is design considerations for higher education. If we go to the next slide, what I'm aiming to do is look at higher education from the experience that I'm having, which is of a new greenfield university. So in other words, from scratch. I mean, we're talking from the ground up. So there's no legacy systems. That's the good news. The bad news is there's no legacy systems. So I've got to actually, with the team, design everything from scratch. So that's provided a really unique opportunity for me and the team to actually go back and think through some things. And we can leapfrog as well, because we aren't tied to what's been done before. And you might say, well, what does that have to do with us? Because we're an established institution. Well, I think that a lot of the things that we're thinking about at the moment are things that your organization is probably thinking about as well. The obvious ones, of course, are AI, but how the student experience is changing, how the governance structures of universities might need to be nudged in certain directions. So I think that you might be able to take away from this particular session some ideas. And what I've done is I've taken the approach of challenges. I have looked at some case studies, so there's little case studies in there that you can follow up and look at those organizations. And also I've tried to kind of put a little strategy piece there as well. So what I'm expecting is that there's a lot here that at the end, hopefully you would identify maybe one or two areas that you might want to work on yourself. I'm working on all of them virtually concurrently, but you don't have to. So there might be a couple of areas that you want to drill down to further. And actually, I do have a recommendation for Ian and maybe in regard to a follow-up workshop, which I think is a must that I'll mention as we get into this. So we can go to the next slide. You'll see here that I'm wanting to look at an overview, first of all, of millennia education, our ecosystem. I wanted to look at universities and emerging models, and then I want to look at those challenges and case studies, and then open it up for discussion. So if you're okay with that agenda, we'll go to the next slide. And I'll give you a little bit of information about millennia education. So millennia education, I'm based in Ho Chi Minh City, and millennia education is, think of it as an umbrella, and there's a number of educational products that sit underneath that. The first one is a K-12 school, which has been developed with King's College, Wimbledon. The second, of course, is the university, Millennia University. And then there are other products that are in discussion at the moment, for example, a foreign branch campus, and also bilingual schools as well. So just focusing on Millennia University, we're looking at the first intake in September 2029. Sounds like a long way off, but actually we have to have all of our programs developed and our staff in place. You have to have 7 staff for every program that you're going to do. You have to have those in place at least a year before you actually take students. So that's a MOAT, a Ministry of Education and Training requirement. So we've got 4 faculties. Our first phase is business and entrepreneurship and data science and information technology. And then we'll follow up with the second phase, which is engineering and applied sciences and architecture and design. We're looking at health, but that might be in another entity as well. So what we're doing is we're looking at how can we create a university that serves Vietnam. So it's an Asia-based university, and addresses some of the future demands of Vietnam, and looking at how we can contribute to the country and to the human resource development, as well as the leadership. So we are looking at it slightly differently. So rather than reforming an old model, this is what universities are, and we've all been in universities for a long time. This is a unique opportunity to sit back and say, well, what could we do that's different? One that focuses on innovation, experiential learning, personal growth, industry alignment, of course, is a given, and international collaboration. But also trying to look at what is the uniqueness of what we're doing. So we go to the next slide. I thought I'd just take a moment to sort of say, I thought it was quite unique starting a new university until I started doing a bit of research and found out that, wow, there's a lot of new universities being developed around the world. India, for example, had 320 new universities established between 2014 and 22. So even just within one decade of 14 to 24, the number of universities in India grew by, wait for it, 60%. Whew. So that's a lot of new universities being developed. China, the same, about 700 universities since the early 2000s. And in Shenzhen alone, which is just, as you know, near the border of Hong Kong, the government planned to build 20 new universities and colleges by 2025/2026. So 20 new universities just going in that one area alone. Nigeria has been very active as well, and I know that UDI is working in this sort of area. And there are 11 new private universities, not government universities, private universities. And so they now have over 100 private universities. In Vietnam, it's stabilizing with about 200 public and private universities. But if we go to the next slide, I just wanted to highlight two universities that are fairly new in Vietnam. One was funded by Vingroup, which is the largest private conglomerate in Vietnam. So there's a lot of big businesses that are setting up universities. That's one of the characteristics here in Vietnam. So Vingroup has committed breathtakingly $353 million USD to build and operate their university. And they aim to make it to the top 100 globally. So that's a lot of money. That's a big chunk of change going in there. Another one, which is worthwhile mentioning, is Finnicker University. And this is backed by FPT. And if we go to the next slide, this is slightly interesting because this university actually existed and it has now been transformed. So they were funded in 2007, but they faced closure about 10 years later because they only had fewer than 50 students. So it was relaunched with 300 students in their first intake. So they had a new strategy, quite a massive investment. And in 2022, it was ranked top #1 in Vietnam in Nature Index. And by 2025, they had 35,000 students. So going from 50 students in 2017 to 2025, 35,000 students. And they've just been awarded the Times Higher Education Leadership Award in Asia. So when we're talking about transformation, it can occur. This is a classic example of a very structured approach towards transformation. So Finnicker University is worth taking a little look at. Go to the next slide. What I want to do now is, here's some of those metrics, I beg your pardon. So students from 300 to 35,000. Faculty, they went from 200 faculty to 840. PhD holders, 50% of their university has a PhD of their teaching staff, and 100 programs, and their infrastructure investment was about 100 million USD. And they've got Scopus papers, they're 70% in Q1, Q2, and spin-off companies, 9 spin-off companies. So it's not a teaching only, it's research and commercial. So very strongly linked to industry, and that's their differentiator. Okay, going to the next slide. There are lots of new models that are worth just kind of looking at. The African Leadership University in Mauritius and Rwanda is a privately funded network just focusing entirely on training future African leaders, but at a low-cost model. So they're really working on delivering, but at the lowest cost. I think you've all seen in the news recently, just in the last month, the London School of Innovation, and they will teach a master's degree using AI tutors, and enrollments will be in June 2026. So the interesting thing about this one is that this is the first regulatory approved AI native university in the world. So they've actually been accredited in the UK with that delivery model. And Philipps University in Germany, they've got a Yuki, which is a robot lecturer that assists with teaching, assessment, and student academic progress and provides personalized support. So a lot of kind of new models are starting to come in. If we go to the next slide, I'm going to be moving off models now, and I'm wanting to look at some of these key challenges. So what are the things that we're thinking about here as we design this university? So the first piece of advice take a serious look at where higher education is going. Student numbers are very split. In some countries, they're increasing dramatically, and in other countries, they are decreasing dramatically. So, give you an example here, Sub-Saharan Africa and North Africa are expected to be the fastest proportional increase, growing at 64 and 60% respectively, whereas Eastern Europe is facing 114% decline. So we've got a very mixed bag around the world of increases. Fortunately, with the Philippines and Vietnam, etc., we're in one of the growth areas. So this is an area with a young population and a lot of growth. So good news for us, there is potential for growth. So we're not struggling with some of the issues that perhaps other universities are experiencing, particularly with decline in international enrollments. One of the things that's being looked at is public perception. People are sort of saying, I don't know if higher education is actually all that it's cracked up to be. And here is a Gallup poll where they're sort of looking at what is the perceptions, admittedly US ones, but only 35% saying college is very important. And that's down quite considerably, 75% since 2010. People are sort of saying, well, why should I go and pay this money at university, spend all this time when I can get perhaps really industry-ready credentials through Coursera in a smaller amount of time, less money, and less, less engagement, that I can do this from home. It's a lot more flexible as to my learning style. And they have a point. They have a point regarding flexibility, cost, and relevance. So that's something that's starting to change. Technological integration, obviously AI will transform every job across every industry. So it's really interesting for us to be designing degrees and programs that are going to go in 2029 for students that are going to graduate 3 years later. We've got to anticipate and look at and try and think that far ahead as to what those roles will entail. And there's a change in learning preferences. It's been said that formal learning is in decline, and people are looking for, as we said, more online resources, more bite-sized learning, and more credentialing of their degrees. So, okay, you're a university and you're a very good university, and I like having that title, but what else can I get here that will actually put me ahead of the pack when I go for a job interview? And they're looking at how you are embedding those credentials in every which way into the programs that you're developing. And of course, increasing competition. And if we go to the next slide, here are a couple of case studies. The University of the People, that's a tuition-free online university with an ultra-low cost delivery model targeting unserved global learners. So massive scalability without a traditional campus infrastructure, while it admittedly lacks brand prestige and research capacity, it does attack that assumption that universities must have expensive physical institutions. Minerva University, you've no doubt all heard about this, which was founded with private venture backing, and they operate without a central campus, and they move students between world cities. So they've got that international differentiation. So they're about global immersion, and they're moving away from traditional lectures, and they use seminars and seminar-based active learning, very heavy on their analytics, and they're focusing on transferable capabilities rather than content memorization. And just recently, the announcement, Coursera and Udemy merger. So now they've got a lot more competitive, and their AI-powered skills platform. So they say together we now support over 290 million learners, 18,000 enterprise customers, and a global system of 95,000 content creators alongside hundreds of universities and industry partners. So if you're looking for competition, that's where we should be looking at Coursera and Udemy. Okay, moving on to the next slide. So when we're looking at awareness, take a moment with your management teams and, market alignment is given. We understand that you understand your environment and your market, but look at some of the tensions that are here. How do you get quality at scale? How do you get flexibility in your programs and students being able to be very flexible in the delivery, but with coherence? How do you get open access, but also high completions? Because sometimes that's a bit of duality there. How do you get degrees, but with capabilities? Content now we can get that. AI can provide that in a nanosecond. What are universities providing? What we're providing is the ability to perform with that knowledge. So we're moving from, I know that information, to this is what I can do with it, and this is how I'm doing it. So the move away from content to capabilities is absolutely paramount, and that understanding and how that translates into our programs. AI integration, but with a human connection and with the learning experience. So how can we actually make it very personalized and use AI capability for personalization? So how can we create knowledge, and then how can we actually commoditize that? So where's the research impact and where is the commercialization of that research? Where is the application? Where's the patents? Where's the usage of that research? Is it a policy? Is it a process? Is it a product? What is it? But how is it being used? Just publishing in a journal is not enough anymore. We were looking for more than that. So some of these discussions are things that you might want to actually have a full-blown discussion with your teams on. And do we want to go international? And how do we build our reputation? Because reputation is getting to be a really important dimension, particularly when it comes to rankings. Okay, going to the next slide. Second piece of advice here is, and we've been looking at this, is look for differentiation. Decide what you truly are and stop pretending that you're everything. So most universities, this sounds familiar, we're research-led, teaching-focused, globally engaged, locally relevant, industry engaged, flexible, rigorous, and inclusive. That's actually not a differentiation, that's a brochure. That's a bit of marketing speak. So it leaves people, students, saying, well, what actually are you? What are you really, really, really known for? What is it that you do really, really well? Go to the next slide. Let's look at some sort of examples here. So College Unbound, they've been granted full accreditation of degrees, and they're just focusing on adult learners who have already got some college experience, but no qualifications. So they're looking at a very flexible design as a remedy for their declining student numbers. And so they're looking at how we can give recognition for prior learning, how we can translate those credits into recognition for current credits, how we can assist people who are adult learners actually get engaged and continue and complete. Now, for example, in our university, we have an on-ramp. We clearly have a foundation program that's going to assist students in getting their IELTS up to the level that's required. But this particular entity, which sits just outside of the university, but under the university structure, can also be used for another segment of the market, and that market is those lifelong learners. So they have an entirely different set of needs and an entirely different set of delivery models, and also recognition for what they've already done. So that is potentially a key differentiator, and it definitely is for College Unbound. The Western Governors University has differentiated on time. So instead of semester progression, students advance by demonstrating competency and mastery. So they have their own self-paced progression, and it is a subscription style tuition with strong adult learner focus and mentoring based support, and workforce aligned programs. So what they do is they don't say, okay, this semester starts on this date and it goes for this many weeks, and then at the end you'll get an examination and then you'll wait until the next semester. No, it's all based on how an individual wants to do. If the individual wants to speed up, submit that assignment, do that work, get through, they do. If they want to slow it down, they slow it down. But it's not cohort by cohort. It's very much on an individual basis. So their differentiator is time, because they say the people that can build the content and the capabilities and do it the fastest are the ones that are really going to do well in tertiary environments now going forward. Victoria University in Australia has differentiated in block mode, and of course that's not earth-shattering, but students study one subject at a time in intensive blocks rather than 4 simultaneously. But what it does require is redesigning timetables, assessment systems, staffing models, student support, pedagogy. There's a lot that goes into converting an entire university into block mode teaching. So VU is optimizing for cognitive load and for student success. And they've got improvement in their engagement and a lot of improvement in their retention, which is quite interesting. So going to the next slide, here's another example. Aalborg University has built its identity around problem-based and project-organized learning. So students work in teams solving real-world interdisciplinary problems. So, for example, what we're looking at is in our accountancy, rather than students doing, let's say, an internship, which they're likely to do if they want to, but it might be that as an accounting student, they are part of a team with a designer, with maybe a marketing person, a digital marketing person, on a project which is specifically provided by a company or an organization. And so instead of their internship, they're doing this problem-based approach with an interdisciplinary-based problem. So Aalborg's built their entire institution around this. That creates very strong industry integration and a lot of interdisciplinary capability with their graduates. So they're quite highly prized. So very much applied learning, very much on collaboration skills, and works really well in the AI era, where information is abundant, but synthesis, problem solving, working with others, and producing an output for a client is really something that they're aiming for. In Arizona State University, that's one of the more strategically transformed universities, and their key differentiators are inclusion, scale, and entrepreneurship. So their positioning is, and this is in the documentation, we are measured not by whom we exclude, but by whom we include. So everything is about inclusion, everything is about scale, and while being naturally research intensive, they've placed their emphasis on mass access, online learning, digital scale, and being very entrepreneurial and very business focused. I mean, Arizona State University, by the name, is a state university. And you would think, okay, how much of their money do they get from the state? Would it be about 90% from the state and 10% from their entrepreneurial initiatives? No, it's the reverse. They get 10% from the state, and all the rest of it comes from entrepreneurial initiatives and research. So they're really funding their ideas and creating corporate partnerships and doing very much branding is around innovation. So that's their key differentiator, and they're known for it. So think about what you're known for. And sometimes there are some things that you might be known for that you don't want to be known for. I'll give you an example here. If we go to the next slide, I don't know if I've actually included this in it as a case. We'll talk about this, but there's a university in New Zealand, Otago University, which is one of the top 2 universities in New Zealand, and according to research, etc. But they had amazing student numbers. And one of the reasons they had amazing student numbers is because they were known as the party university. Who else would go to the utter bottom of New Zealand, where it's cold as, because it was part of university. So their numbers were quite dramatic. Now, the university wasn't too thrilled about that positioning strategy and had been trying to change it. But essentially, that was their positioning, and that was how they were perceived. So your differentiator might not be what you think it is, it might be what others think it is. So are you elite? Are you research intensive? Do you have mass access and mobility? Are you about lifelong learning and taking more, going after more adult learners? Are you industry integrated? You are about student support. Are you about employability, internationalization, being more international, more AI enabled or personalized learning? So the suggestion here is that if we go to the next strategy, what is advisable is to really think about what are we good for? What are we known for? If we can go to the next slide. So you could be, and don't do it on AI necessarily, because it's really hard to compete at the moment on that unless you are really doing it well. But think about what one of your really strengths, things that you do really, really well, and hone in on that, put resources around that, put effort around that, and really focus on getting that differentiation. Because if you're sort of all of these things, you're just another university, really. Why would I go to you other than the fact that you're down the road? Proximity is not a differentiation strategy. So next suggestion, developing your AI strategy. From the universities that I've been examining and doing research on, they usually fall into one of three categories. One, they're still trying to sort of stop the tide, and how can we stop students using AI, and how can we check that they're not cheating, et cetera, et cetera. Well, that's going to be a bit of a lost cause, because AI is here and it's going to keep coming on. And so trying to take that approach is not going to work. The next group are the ones that go, well, let's work on some projects. Let's identify some projects and start working on those. And then the third group is the group that's really taken the bull by the horns and has said, let's look at AI as an operating system, and where they've embedded AI into the curriculum, into the research, into the operations, into student support, into governance, industry partnerships, and they've done it virtually all simultaneously. A big ask, but there are organizations that have done this. Now, most universities, don't beat yourself up here, most universities are still in this, what we call the pilot chaos phase, with scattered experiments and inconsistent policies and nervous faculty and isolated innovation teams. So if we go to the next slide, the example of the first way, the project way, this is what ASU did initially. So this particular phase it gives you an example of how they implemented the AI strategy, and they took very much a project approach to it all. So what they did was they first of all got significant leadership commitment throughout the organization. Then they went on to secure enterprise partnerships. So with this, they went in full on with ChatGPT, and they did that in 2024. And so they negotiated institutional-wide access. Then they went from there to an open innovation challenge. And this is where they had challenge grants. And so they gathered ideas, and they came up with something like about 564 proposals, of which they generated 250 AI-driven, active and funded projects that they supported. And with that, they were able to come up with some successes. And so they went to this Open Innovation Challenge, and then they went to building the faculty capability, because people were now interested, and there were some success stories to talk about. And then they tiered up the projects. And by tearing up the project is that they started to use these case studies. They looked at more pilots and more projects, and they put in a little bit more infrastructure and some data work there as well. So they gave them more assistance to the process. And then they actually said that one of the other things was more lightweight governance. So, sorry. That keeps on going off. Sorry about that. What they did was lightweight governance. Some people kind of get scared and they want to put in a lot of governance. But what they did here was very light governance. So what they did was they used what they call a principled innovation framework. So they put some rules around it to do with privacy, to do with being human-centered, and to do with equity. So they put some sort of kind of value-based rules around that. And then they also decided that they would, assist wherever possible. So opening up sort of data sources for this. And then they also had a very important rule, and that is protecting their own data. Because if you're putting some of that data into something like ChatGPT or Claude, you're actually putting some of that data into a sort of a big system. So you have to look at the IT security around that. So that was the approach that ASU used in their implementation strategy, and it's quite well documented. So you can find that if it's something that you would like to do as far as a kickoff sort of point of view. If you go to the next slide, you can see that the key components, though, of a bigger strategy, the full-on one, is working out who's going to lead it. What approach? Are you going to do task versus the full platform? What sort of partnerships? Who do you want to go into partnership with? What sort of faculty and capability lift are you going to provide? What sort of curriculum and assessment integration, which is usually the first? Start with your curriculum first. Look at students and their AI fluency. Look at your operational side. Look at your research infrastructure, and look at investment and the governance. So those are sort of if you look at all the AI strategies that are being deployed, these are the usual components that are covered off. If we go to the next slide, I think the biggest area of attention and that we have been looking at is how's the curriculum going to look in the next decade, and how different is it going to be? And the areas that we've been looking at is, if you talk about your graduate profile and you want your graduate to be differentiated from other graduates, then how is your curriculum looking different? So if you are wanting to create a lifelong learner, where is your lifelong learning skills pickup? Where is it? We have a module that we have developed, which is called Learning for Work in a Changing World, and it's a compulsory. It's part of what we call an MU core. Every student in the university, irrespective of what faculty they're in, does this particular core unit. We also look at AI applications, and we're also looking at entrepreneurship as well. So what is the flavor of your graduates? And just hoping that the graduates are going to turn out in a certain way is not enough. You really have to have a direct link back to, can you identify in your curriculum where you're differentiating your graduate and your graduate profile? Curriculum design, we're going to be looking at this, AI resilient assessment, and this is the area where my recommendation is to have a whole workshop just on how can you develop AI resilient assessments, because there's some great techniques and tools out there for that. So not being afraid of utilizing AI fully for students. We're expecting them to do that, but how can you make your assessments resilient? So we don't have, for example, any formal examinations unless it's required by an accrediting body. So there's no formal examinations. We tend to work on authentic assessment, and we tend to also work very hard at making our assignments AI resilient. And one of the best sources of making assignments AI resilient is AI, because it says we can't do this and we can't do that. Validation, who's validating? You might think, well, we're validating, we're the university. Not enough anymore. Who else is validating you? Who else is validating that graduate, that skill set, that capability? Having lots of external validation on your particular programs is absolutely critical, and also embedding any credentials that might be part of that validation process. Flexibility and qualification length. So let's just go into these just a little bit more in detail. If we go to the next slide. Curriculum design, some of the things that we're looking at here are redesigning from content, to capabilities. So how can we build capabilities? We're assuming that content is, well, we're not assuming, we're testing for it, we're doing diagnostics for it, but we're moving on from just content and looking at capabilities. We're also using the concept of a living curriculum. I mean, we've all been in universities where to change anything in a course takes a few committees and an academic board decision, and it takes an age. How can you create, particularly in data science, IT, computer science, what's called a living curriculum, a curriculum that actually adopts and develops continuously, but doesn't build up so that it's so big? What are you taking out? What are you putting in? Is this curriculum actually living? Is it breathing? Is it keeping up to date right up to this last semester? So how can you create, and there are techniques around this, of how you can create a living curriculum. There's another concept that I refer to, and that's skill skipping. And I'll give you an example. So we were meeting with an industry advisory board that was critiquing our accounting qualification. And the idea now is they said, people don't need to do debits and credits. Skip that. Because now what the students are going to be working with is obviously cloud-based accounting systems. They are not going to be learning about debits and credits. There are some things that now you can look at. What can we skill skip and actually say, I don't think we need that anymore. Really hard, because a lot of academics are really wedded to their courses, and you've got to know these foundations. But as these industry people said, you don't need that anymore. You actually, that's being done for you as part of these cloud-based accounting systems. Credentialing, I've mentioned that now a number of times, building it in to your course so that the students come out with that course, that degree, plus a transcript which is full of credentials. Now, sometimes there aren't the credentials, but you can stack those qualifications. You can put, let's say, 2 courses together and wrap a certificate around it. Another 2 courses, wrap a certificate around it. Another 2, wrap a certificate around it. You can sell those as far as executive education and industry-based education, and they are stackable qualifications, but they're also bite-sized in the ability to be able to train and acquire some expertise. Scenario-based learning is very much now part of the pedagogy. Cross-disciplinary problem solving, we've mentioned. Industry-embedded experiences, anywhere you can get those in. And it's not just at the end when people do an internship, should be in every single course. Soft skills focus, those aren't going away. And how are you building up those soft skills? Personal development, digital literacy, leadership, careers. How are you preparing people for careers? We have what we call Millennium University Advantage courses. There are only 3 credits, but they are around professional development, digital literacy, ethics and sustainability, leadership, and career advancement, and how do you actually prepare and advance your careers. So those are compulsory courses. Once again, everybody does those within the university. Fully authentic assessments, AI resilient assessments, micro-credentials, taking them really down to the bite size. And those can be used quite successfully when you back end into schools. And double degrees. And if you design right and go back and redesign, you can actually get a double degree in under a year if you design your degree structures. Okay, if we keep going here, I'm going to really speed up here because we've only just got through a few. The next slide is to do with AI resilient assessment, and you're going to be getting these slides. So here's some strategies that scale quite well if you're trying to develop AI resilient assessments. And so there's some suggestions as to how to do that. In the next slide, We've talked about flexibility, but flexibility comes in a lot of different forms to do with your on-ramps, how do you actually get people in at various points, student interest, and how you diagnose people for their capability, and then you personalize their learning, and multiple exit points, because not everybody necessarily wants to stay for a full degree. Academic orientation, research versus studio learning, assessment, credentialing, authentic versus accredited, delivery. Can you honestly say that a student can work anytime, anywhere, and on any device? Or do they have to be sort of in a structured environment? I mean, that's true flexibility. Anywhere, anytime, any device. And time, do we require them to actually have that set time of how they learn? And Arizona has just introduced a new artificial intelligence platform that for a fee of $5 a month, they turn faculty lectures, slide decks, and quizzes into instant personalized courses. So really low cost delivery. That's flexible. Okay, going to the next slide. Qualifications lengths, you could look at this, but there's some people really pulling degrees down to accelerated 2-year degrees is a starting to see more of sprint semesters, having recognition for prior learning, etc., and double degrees that don't take a lot of time. Next slide is student retention and support. We're doing very well at getting students in sometimes, but not necessarily when it comes to actually graduation. Looking at the stats, 44% participation globally, but graduations only 27%. So a lot of people start, don't necessarily finish. So paying quite a bit of attention to this whole idea of retention, and there's a whole lot of strategies that could be discussed there, and maybe that's another workshop that could be looked at. If we move to the next slide, governance. Universities have very complicated governance structures. They're multi-layered, very committee-heavy, consensus decision-making, but they're slow. They're risk-averse, resistant to change, and that's not really going to bode well for an organization that's going to be en masse, global, flexible, and so having to change these governance structures are also part of a reflection process. So those structures were designed for a long time ago, not for what we have now. And if we go to the next slide, there's a whole lot of suggestions as to how to look at revision of governance. And once again, another potential workshop to be had. And if we go to the next slide, financial stability, that's a whole area of discussion as well, to do with the fact that it's really difficult. These universities, a lot of universities are hemorrhaging money and don't know how to make money. So that in itself is yet another workshop. So there's a couple of case studies there. And if we go to the next slide, if I had more time, I'd actually spend some time on financial sustainability strategies. We're a private university. We have to be concerned about that because we want to survive and we want to do great things. So it really does mean that you've got to look at how you run your university in a different way. So going to the next slide, this is the closing one. So my suggestion here is don't do it alone. Work out what your immediate priorities are, your medium priorities, and your long-term priorities. And I've given some examples here of what might be your immediate priorities, medium and long-term. You don't have to do everything at once like I'm doing. You can actually pick it out. What are the things that are most important to you and really focus on those. And also get help. I'll give you some examples. We're doing financial modeling, quite sophisticated financial modeling. We're using NOUS, which is an Australian-based organization that specializes in education and does brilliant work. When it comes to 24/7 support of students, we're outsourcing that to Studiosity. Studiosity does a fantastic job, well worth looking at it. And then when you look at digital transformation, UDI has been doing an awesome job with a lot of universities around the world with their digital transformation. and assisting them in how they might pick out any one of the areas that we've been talking about, curriculum, research enhancement. And I haven't been looking at research, and I haven't been looking at staffing because of the time constraint, but any one of those could be an area that requires attention. And UDI, having worked with UDI, I know they've got some excellent models and tools to assist universities with those transitions. So I'm going to stop there. That was a bit of a whirlwind. Sorry about that. Lots to talk about and lots of areas that we can perhaps go back into at another time. But you'll have those slides if you like. And I'm also available to have a chat as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Gail. I missed your sharing, and I know that you have seen familiar faces, familiar names in
Yes.
Zoom right
Oh,
now.
there they all are.
Yes,
Bong and Rock.
we have
That's
some of our
wonderful.
UDI fellows. We have, I think, a few from the accelerator team and a few others who are in Zoom.
Great. Oh, I'm so thrilled. So thrilled. Thank you very much for joining me today. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you very much once again, Gail, for those insightful reflections. It is fascinating to see how the design difference manifests when building an institution or building a university, moving beyond traditional structures to something that is more agile. Now, I have been receiving a few questions already, Gail, and I'll make sure that I'll be able to read it one by one, but of course, due to the limited time, we'll do it a little quickly. So for the rest of you who have not sent their questions yet, please feel free to type in your questions in the chat box. Okay, Gail, you mentioned the importance of deciding what you want to be, right?
Mm.
Deciding what you want to be. Now, for a university that has been around for decades, and we have like more than about 2,000 universities here in the Philippines who have
Mhm.
been around for decades. How do you peel back the layers of tradition to find a new and unique identity without losing the soul in the process?
Okay, I can use an example here. What you want to do is look at what is your DNA? What's the most important thing to you? So it's while we know that we do all these things, we know we do great research and we know that we're really good at teaching, what can you honestly say is the core of your DNA? Is it nurturing and support? And the example that I'm thinking of is Deakin University in Australia had this sort of dilemma of what are we actually known for? And it is to do with their flexibility, the fact that they train so many people, and they're the ones that came up with that phrase, anytime, any device, anywhere. That was it's about their flexibility and the ability to deliver. That was core to their DNA. So you don't want to lose what you're already good at. But you actually want to thin it down and thin it down and actually find out what is the core essence of what you do.
Okay, thank you very much, Gail. Now, I am moving to the next question. Next question is on AI and technology.
Mhm.
ASU has been such a pioneer in AI, as you have mentioned earlier, and for some of our Zoom participants who are already familiar with ASU or the Arizona State University. For those of us here in the Philippines in particular, just starting this journey, what is the day one priority? And should we focus on upskilling our faculty first or on changing how we actually assess our students?
I would say look at curriculum first. Look at curriculum, that's important. So a series of projects, and a lot of lecturers are all facing the same dilemma. How can I make my assessments interesting, engaging, building capability, and AI resilient? Because I want them to engage with AI. I want them to use this resource. Why not have a super brain in your pocket? But I want to go further than that. So I would say that the one area that a lot of staff want the most support in is in curriculum redesign and also assessment. So if I was going to focus on an area, that would probably be it rather than, let's say, research, or maybe and the next one after that would be to do with the student interface. How can we use AI to support students and to actually assist them? So that would be the second one. And by getting a couple of wins on the board, people get excited about that. They see what it's done, they share with others, and then you can then build out from there. So if you're wanting to do it on a project by project basis, I would put a lot of attention initially on assessment and then into the curriculum, then into the student interaction and student interface.
Okay. Assessment, curriculum, and the student interface.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yep.
those three. Now I have here another question. I am conscious of your time also, Gail, because I know that if everyone's busy, I know you are busier. Now, let me throw another question. Uh-huh. This is on not going it alone. The
Yeah.
importance of, having someone, having a third party or a partner to help you in this journey. You mentioned that the benefit of having a partner. When a
Yeah.
university works with an institute, like for example, in the case of UDI, which you also mentioned earlier, what does that relationship actually look like in the day-to-day? Is it a mentorship, a blueprint, or something that is more hands-on?
It's co-design. It's co-design. So what you have is you have UDI, the process that's used is that they assist with the organization, they provide examples of best practice that's occurring elsewhere, they expose the leadership to some of the opportunities that could be put into their own organization, and then they actually map out the journey of how you could go about that. We know that universities are highly resistant to change, and so that's accepted. So how can you actually introduce effective change that will actually last the distance? And it's based on what's appropriate for the organization and what's perhaps been already tested, or what is a new or innovative idea that would work in that context. Might not work in another context, but it has to be of relevant to the organization itself and what it is trying to achieve.
Okay, thank you very much, Gail. It's really important to find, I don't know if it's the perfect partner who knows the needs of the institution and who can really walk hand in hand with the
Mhm.
institution as they navigate on this journey. Now we have a question here, another question in the chat. I hope you don't mind, Gail, if
Oh, go ahead.
yeah,
Go ahead.
okay. Allow me to read the question in the chat box. This is coming from LPU Manila. In integrating AI into higher education while preserving human connection, what are the best practices to ensure that technology enhances, not replaces meaningful student-faculty engagement?
Yep. Yep, that's a very good one. I think with AI, it does shift. The agent does shift away from the lecturer. The lecturer is still there, but there's now another support structure. And while it's difficult for lecturers to have a personalized one-on-one relationship with every single student in every single course, AI can do that. AI knows the history of that individual. They know their strengths, they know their weaknesses. So it's not an either or situation. It's actually assisting the lecturer and providing greater support for the student, a more personalized support. And so it's not I'm now redundant as a lecturer. It's I've got somebody else who's really looking after this person as well as me. And I get to go and use any analytics that is appropriate that might flag when that student is not engaging, when that student might need some extra support. And I have then got the ability to intervene at that stage. There's some really interesting research about how, with retention, you can write to a student, you can say through a channel, oh, we noticed that you haven't logged on to the LMS system recently. The best thing is personal contact. So that's something that AI can't do. It can't pick up the phone or ask for the student, can you drop by my office? That's the personal, the human connection is still there and still critical, because while AI can do some of the heavy lifting and some of the analytics and some of the pinpointing and some of the support, at the end of the day, the pinnacle connection is still an individual one.
That's right. That I totally agree with you, Gail. No matter, even if AI has been there everywhere assisting us, still human connection would never be replaced by AI. And I think that's a challenge to all faculty, all administrators, everyone, that this personal connection should never be forgotten, right? Okay,
Mhm.
another question, Gail. Okay, in relation to AI, how can we retain the originality of thought while we encourage AI usage?
Mm, mm.
How can
Okay.
we retain the
Yeah.
originality of thought while we encourage AI usage?
And that's why I think we need to have a whole workshop on this, because it is, you want to go further than this. So the role that we now have as educators is to actually have encourage the reflection, the distillation, the critical thinking, the application, the review, the synthesis. Those activities are what we're actually requiring of students. And that's something that they can't plug back into AI, something that they're going to have to do themselves. And so the techniques around creating that and how you can create that in an assessment, where you can get peer review. There's a whole lot of strategies, I'm not really answering this question because very well, because it actually is, there are a lot of strategies that you can use, and they're worthwhile exploring those strategies and looking at them and seeing how you can shift from a dependency on AI. And that's it. I've just submitted the assignment. I did mention Studiosity. Studiosity is a support third party, but they also have some fabulous technology around actually having students submit their material that they've developed through AI and get critiqued on. So there are some really good methodologies that lecturers can use, but also third parties can use as well. And it's not a policing mechanism. It's about critiquing and having the students reflect on their work and change it, and reflect on their work and change it.
Thanks, Gail. I'm sure our participants here will also look into this platform that you shared,
Curiosity. Yeah,
Studiosity. All
yeah,
right, all right.
yeah.
As much as I want to read all the questions here, I know we are over time already by 8 minutes, Gail. So as we wrap up the session, I want to sincerely thank you again, Dr. Gail McDonald, for sharing your expertise. I think you have given us a lot to chew on,
Yeah.
especially the idea of being institutional architects rather than just managers. At the University Design Institute, we believe that universities are not just places of learning, but are themselves designed entities that must evolve to meet the needs of today's dynamic educational system. The cases you shared, Gail, provided a clear roadmap for that evolution. And in recognition of everything that you have shared to our community of practice today, we are so honored to present this certificate of appreciation to you. Of course, this certificate is signed by no less than our Vice Chair.
The lovely Minu.
Yes, the lovely Minu Ipe. And I'm sure this is not going to be the last session with you, Gail, because we are seeing that, as you share all you share your expertise, we have a lot to talk in the coming sessions, and expect another invitation from UDI. And to our dear participants here, I'm sure you will see Gail again in our future sessions. So to everyone who joined us today, thank you very much. Every time we host these kinds of this Dialogues for Design series, I am genuinely moved by the passion we all share for reimagining higher education here in our country. Now, a few quick reminders before we log off, everyone. Please take a quick moment to click the evaluation link. Okay, we are showing that on screen. It will also be posted in the chat box. Your feedback is what helps Collab UDI keep these sessions relevant and more impactful. Once you hit submit, keep an eye on your inbox. We will be sending you your certificates automatically. All right? This is a monthly journey, everyone. As mentioned earlier, this is already our fifth session, and we're just getting started. We'd love to see everyone again on July. Next series will be in July for another deep dive into fresh ideas. In the meantime, follow us on the University Design Institute Facebook page and LinkedIn to stay in the loop. If you missed anything, everyone, for today's session, don't worry. The recording will be up on our website soon. So please watch out for that. So again, thank you very much. And Gail, we really miss you and we look forward to having you once again.